Hello. So today we're going to look at something that's not super technical, but is really important as you get started in the world of technology. As you move forward in technology, you will have the opportunity to get to information that others do not have access to. If you go into cybersecurity, you're going to have a wealth of skills, basically a computer ninja, where you could use those skills to harm people instead of do good. Here's the thing, in our society, we have laws. And lots of people in our society believe that, well, if I'm not breaking the law, then it's okay to do. Some believe that if they don't get caught, it's okay to do, which is not really good for our society. A code of ethics is basically something that guides your own behavior. For instance, do unto others, right? That's a common saying in today's society. Karma, right? Karma, everything will come back to you. If you're good to people, then you'll receive good. And if you're bad to people, then you'll receive bad. Those are foundational things for ethics. In other words, making a decision and saying to yourself, well, I'm the network admin and I can take a look at what everybody's doing and spending their time on. I can see what websites they go to and how long they've been there. But my code of ethics states that that is a dishonest thing to do. That's not something I'm being asked to do. And so I'm going to stay out of that. It's not illegal for you to do it, but it's unethical for you to do it. So let's look at some concepts. And these questions will help you organize what you believe. And it's important to have a good, solid ethical foundation in technology or in your life in general so that you know, I'm not going to cross that line, right? I'm not going to do that. That is not something that I will take part of. So how have you seen technology used for good and how have you seen it misused? Right now it's going on all the time, right? We have this situation where Facebook and these other places have news that's being posted, have people's opinions that are being posted. It's being used like it's a news outlet. But they don't have to follow any of the news rules, meaning that if you say something that they don't like, that they can just censor you out of that situation. To me, that's technology that's being misused. However, there's other parts of Facebook that are being used for good and connecting people and people being able to share ideas. It's an interesting conundrum, as they say. And to what degree do you think governments should use technology to monitor their citizens? We're moving towards a direction where the government is going to be monitoring everything we do. How they're getting away with that is through a third-party doctrine, meaning that if they have Google, which is a third party, go out and monitor you, then they can just get the information from Google and it's good. They're not breaking any laws on that front. If they go to AT&T so they can see all your text messages, or Verizon to see all your text messages, which they do, that's a part of it, then they don't break any laws doing that. But is that ethical for them to do? Should you monitor somebody that doesn't need monitoring? You know, where is that line? Anyway, let's take a look at ethics. That's your personal behaviors. That builds responsibility and trust. Computer ethics requires more than just avoiding unlawful acts, but also upholding standards such as confidentiality, human dignity, civility, and property rights. In other words, let's take a look. This first portion is like, okay, guess what's coming? Right, so artificial intelligence, if you don't know what that is, that's an area of computer science that focuses on making machines intelligent like us, having them make decisions that normally they haven't been able to make in the past, and have them make them the way we would make them. Intellectual property is something that's owned by somebody else. And that's usually very freely, you know, lots of people get upset because YouTube is like, don't play that song. You can't play that. But what they're trying to do is uphold copyright laws that really somebody created that and they should get paid for what they do. If you draw a picture and you put it out on the internet, you drew that, right? You drew that, and all you have to do is say this copyright is James McBride. But you'll see that picture, if it's good, go across the internet and go everywhere. And you're like, hey, I'm not getting anything from that. People don't even know I did it, right? So intellectual property. The dark web is actually a network of encrypted content that allows users to engage in untraceable activity. They call it the dark web because a lot of bad stuff happens there. And what they mean by it is, right, the internet, as we talk about later, is a collection of servers. It's a collection of routers, switches. It's a collection of all this stuff that's running out there. And then the World Wide Web sits on top of that using HTTP and HTML to make that happen. So the web is not the internet. The internet is not the web. The web is just a portion. And so if you use other protocols, you can access other websites that are not typically accessible to us, and that's the dark web. Using other protocols that most people are not aware of, and what they're trying to do is engage in untraceable activity. This is usually the argument for tracking everybody. Make it all open, and then none of that stuff will happen, which of course, you never can stop bad from happening. Green computing means that environmentally, you are trying to recycle your equipment. You're trying to not use energy as much as possible. You're trying not to damage the environment. I can tell you, if the government really believed in this, they would incentivize getting rid of computers and recycling them, but they don't do that. It's always funny to me to listen to the politicians talk, and they're, green, 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 green. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't incentivize actually recycling any of that. You just don't. You talk about it, but it doesn't happen. So around here, right, you can dump your computers in the landfill all you want, and in most places you can. You just dump them in there, and that's a lot. That's a lot of computers being dumped in there when all of it could be recycled. Ergonomics, like how should you sit? And that is no different than a repetitive strain from somebody throwing a ball constantly. You will be sitting at a computer for much of your life. And I'm not just talking about IT, right? Those of us going into IT realize that all the other workers are doing the same thing. They're sitting on a computer all the time too. And so if you're not sitting properly, if you're not using things properly, you can get repetitive effects where your muscles start to hurt in your arm and such. Blue light, they found that blue light, right, that's emitted from electronic devices can lead to eye strain, headaches, fatigue. Again, anytime you're doing something over and over again or staring at a screen all the time, you're gonna find that that's gonna damage you, that will damage you, right? Cyber loafing, employees using their company's internet connection for personal use. This happens all the time and usually is not regulated. Usually, you know if somebody's doing their job because you had them do certain things and they got it done in a certain time. A certain amount of cyber loafing, some would say, is good for employees because it's a little downtime in between tasks that they do. But that can be a big issue. That can be a huge issue. But how much should you monitor them? How much should you watch them and see how much they're cyber loafing? Because with computer systems, you can monitor everything coming in and out of that machine and how long. So, and then net neutrality. That's a government policy that required internet service providers to allow equal access to all web content. This started to happen because basically as Netflix just ramps up and everybody started using it, the internet service providers wanted to limit that bandwidth for Netflix users. And so it was argued for quite some time. And then this was actually a government policy that said, hey, you're not going to regulate that. Because they realized that if you start to regulate things, you could be paid by Hulu to restrict Netflix and increase Hulu's bandwidth. And that wouldn't be correct to do. Predictive policing, this has become a huge thing. Law enforcement practice that involves analyzing data from traffic cameras, surveillance footage, social media postings, and finding out who's going to commit a crime. Now, this becomes a real hot topic because there's a story about a guy that gets arrested because he was found in the area multiple times of this murder. He had no idea what was going on. So his life gets destroyed for couple of months. And then of course, why was he actually flagged? Well, because he would cycle around a certain neighborhood. And so they saw him on traffic cams and all that stuff. And they took his, it's like, he was in the area so multiple times. He's coming back to the scene of the crime. And then, of course, really, he was just trying to get exercise is all he was doing. So this is nowhere near perfect and always seems to be applied poorly. I don't know what the deal is there. Hacktivism, that's a malicious attack on a network or a website because you have some kind of social change involved regarding some civil disobedience, other cyber terrorism. To me, this is totally illegal. I think they should be prosecuted just as if they had damaged a building. That's basically saying you don't agree with somebody, so you go out to their website and you put all this anti stuff all over it. And then, of course, because it's not a crime, really, it's not treated like as if you went down and destroyed the property. But you guys know as well as I do that electronic image, that electronic stuff you own, in some ways is more important than the physical things that you have. And so I believe if people get caught doing that, that's totally illegal. To me, it's like trespassing. It's electronic damage, just like it's physical damage, and they should be dealt with, honestly. And then doxing. Publish of private contact information of one's political opponents online. And this has been happening more and more, where basically one side doesn't agree with the other. So they actually hack or pay a hacker to go get that person's information, like where they live and where they work, and then they publish it online and lives get ruined. That's a lot to think about. When you look at this, think about, well, ethically, how should this operate? Because you're going to go into this field, and as these things, and you go, who knows what you're going to be doing out there. It's going to come to a situation where you may have to make a decision when you see a company using information unethically. As a matter of fact, Google was always known for being a great employer, and probably about 3 or 4 years ago, people started leaving. And there was a number of reasons, but one of the big reasons is they'd say, I saw what they were doing with people's data and I didn't agree. Now, they wouldn't say much else, and you can imagine that if you are leaving Google, information-wise, the most powerful company in the world, them and Facebook, you're not going to say much else. Otherwise, they'll probably come after you. And that may be a decision that you get into when you go work someplace and then find out that the company you're supporting is making some unethical decisions, and maybe you have to leave because, well, it's not illegal, but you don't agree with what they're doing. So think about that. That's the idea of technology and ethics, to think about those things so that you yourself can determine what you're going to do before you get there and have to make those decisions.